Hey guys, tonight we talk about my 3-day ordeal on Snake Island, that cursed speck of land off Brazil's coast, where I went solo armed with nothing but my backpack and my stubborn sense of adventure. You probably won't survive this, but I went anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Everyone, please leave a comment about any of your stories for me to know. Now take a seat, have a warm cup of tea, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The moon hangs low over the jagged rocks as you drag your feet up the narrow shoreline, tannic water lapping at your boots. The air tastes of salt and something darker, old decay, the promise of hidden dangers. You scan the silhouette of the jungle's edge, serrated fronds, waving in the breeze like warning flags. Each footstep sends a shiver racing up your spine. You aren't even 20 paces in, and already you feel the weight of isolation pressing against your ribs. You plant your makeshift camp on a flat patch of coral sand back to a cluster of gnarled trees. With trembling hands, you jam tent stakes into the ground, convincing yourself it's enough to hold against wind or wildlife. You strike flint against steel sparks, dance and hiss, before igniting a smoky plume of flame. The fire sputters, then roars to life, casting flickering amber shadows across the beach. You stare at that glow mesmerized as if it could protect you from every unseen coil of venom in the undergrowth. Your heart hammers in your ears. Somewhere beyond the firelight, snakes slither through the leaf litter. You remember that crocodile dung sunscreen tip from some lost travel blog and can't help but laugh at yourself. Are you really coating your arms with swamp muck tonight? But absurdity drapes its thin comfort. If nothing else, you'll be talking about this mess for years to come. Night deepens. The surf's rhythm grows hypnotic, almost lulling you into a false sense of safety until a sudden rustle in the brush jolts you upright. Firelight trembling in your widened eyes. You grip the length of a broken branch, knuckles white, and listen. The island hushes again. You exhale slow and shaky, reminding yourself why you came here, to test your limits, to feel truly alive. You whisper to the wind, bring it on, even though every instinct begs you to run. A lone bat swoops overhead, wings brushing the inky sky. Static electricity prickles your skin, the air pregnant with a coming storm. You collapse onto your pack, eyelids heavy. 3 days of survival start now. The island watches ancient and unforgiving. You close your eyes and brace for what's next. You fumble with fraying rope as the fire's embers wane, teeth chattering in the sudden chill that snakes its way through your thin shirt. Sweat from your walk has cooled, and every bristle of skin on your arms stands on end. You scrape at damp driftwood, frantically hunting for dry kindling beneath partially buried leaves. Mud clings to your fingernails, and the scent of rot stings your nose. Each small flame you coax to life feels like a personal victory against the island's all-consuming gloom. A low wind rattles the twisted branches behind you, and strange silhouettes dance across the sand stalks of undergrowth that look like shifting shapes when the firelight strikes them. You inch closer, piling twigs onto the growing blaze, coaxing it into roar. Sparks lift and scatter, each a tiny star flickering before being swallowed by darkness. You stand back, chest heaving, as the fire finally steadies its heat, blooming across your shoulders like a protective cloak. You peer into the black fringe of the jungle, where leaves shudder in silent gusts. It occurs to you that light is a powerful currency here, and you're wildly overdrawn. A snapping twig snaps that thought in two, your heart flips. You're not the only mover in this forest. Something watches, something skittering just beyond your vision. You tighten your grip on a stout branch, the rough wood digging into your palm, and remind yourself no panic. Focus, breathe. Crickets chirp, but a deeper rhythm pulses beneath it all, the rustle of scaled bodies sliding over damp earth. You choke back a retch as the memory of a fisherman's warning surfaces. Snake Island is home to some of the deadliest vipers on the planet. You press your back against the trunk of a leaning palm, its bark rough against your shirt, and scan the perimeter of light. The fire's glow cuts a quarter circle into the darkness, leaving a yawning void behind you, where reality and nightmare blur. You pack soil around the fire's base, creating a crude trench to prevent embers from drifting. Heat from the flames feels comforting until you realize how small this circle of warmth really is. You're a lone ember, stranded in an infinite void. Each breath you take carries ash that tickles your throat and you cough. The jungle's nocturnal choir swells, frogs croak in chorus, insects hum like electric currents, and unseen creatures slap the ground in search of prey. You wince, tracing a familiar name in your mind. Remember that ancient alcove you'll find later, the one that might grant you shelter? Tonight it might as well be on the moon. Your fire sputters as a cool breeze snags at the logs. You throw another stick on, and the blaze flares, revealing a trail of fresh footprints. Human animal, you lean forward, straining to make them out. They lead from the shoreline into the black maze of trees. Your chest tightens. You're so far from civilization that any footprints here could be older than you think, but your gut twists at the possibility of someone else stranded or worse yet displaced wildlife. Lightning flashes on the horizon, a silver scar across a sky that feels too vast and uncaring. Thunder follows a distant drumroll, promising rain. You think of your damp gear, how waterlogged everything will become once the storm hits. But fire is fickle. You feed it more wood, watching the shadows leap and cavort. A pair of glowing eyes appears at the edge of the glow, too low to be a monkey, too narrow to be a deer. The eyes blink, then vanish. You freeze, heart pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. You wait for seconds that stretch into minutes, but nothing comes. The jungle hushes again, as if chastened. Realizing you've been holding your breath, you exhale slowly, trying to calm the panic that bubbles up in your chest. You remind yourself of every survival trick you half learned in training. Never turn your back on the fire, always watch your perimeter, conserve energy. You pat your pockets and find your whistle. You clamp it between your teeth and take a tentative step toward the darkness to test the ground. Mud squelches beneath your boot and you jerk back. Not worth it. Your refuge is here inside this fragile ring of flame. You rummage through your pack and produce a small hanger of dried, jerked meat, tough, salty, and aromatic. You tear off a piece, chew thoughtfully, and let the flavors anchor you in the present moment. Hunger gnaws at your belly, but you swallow slowly, stretching the snack over several minutes. Each chew punctuates the silence, and you imagine that someone on the other side of the planet is eating dinner right now, as you sit alone, sensing death's whisper in every rustle. A tentative sweat breaks out across your forehead as you glance up at a sky now heavy with swollen clouds. Rain is inevitable. You hunker down, wrapping your jacket around your hips like a makeshift barrier against ground moisture. You press the wooden branch against the fire, coaxing more heat, and adjust your makeshift tent flap so you can shield your face. The wind picks up, and you hear it whisper through the leaves, an indecipherable chant that sets your teeth on edge. Time becomes elastic in the dark. How long has it been since you landed? An hour, 2:10. You remember that moment when you first set foot in the jungle, heart fluttering with excitement. Now that same heart beats with the primal rhythm of someone fighting to stay alive. You remind yourself this is why you came, to feel every nerve ending, engage on high alert, to trade comfort for raw experience. But you also feel the ache of raw vulnerability, a loneliness that sinks into your bones deeper than the night's cold. The storm breaks. Rain lashes the fire, hissing as it meets the heat. You jostle logs, stacking them higher, but too much water seeps in. Sparks sputter out. Darkness surges, a tidal wave of black, swallowing your lifeline. You strike flint again, fingers numb, and pray for sparks. A single ember catches. You cup your hands around it, sheltering the fragile flame as if it were your own flickering heartbeat. A flash of lightning reveals a world frothing with rain and chaos, and a determination you didn't know you possessed. The ember grows. You breathe life back into the fire, feeding it branch after soaked branch. It roars again, molten gold in the storm. You lean in, face flushed with heat and rain, and for the first time truly understand Snake Island's darkness isn't empty. It's alive. It watches, it tests you, and as long as you can keep that fire burning, maybe, just maybe, you'll last until dawn. Dawn arrives in a muted haze of lavender and slate as you press your palms against the damp canvas of your tent flap. You hesitate for a moment, savoring the warmth that clings to the air around your dying fire, then yank the flap open and step into the cool light. The storm has passed, leaving slick beads of rain clinging to every leaf and blade of grass. The beach is empty, save for driftwood and scattered debris. You pat out the remaining embers and pack your gear with trembling fingers, Sleep has been elusive, and your muscles protest the movement. But the urgency of thirst and hunger propels you onward. You shoulder your backpack and set off up a faint trail that winds through mangrove roots and twisted vines. Mist swirls around your calves and the forest floor squelches underfoot. Every step feels like moving through liquid shadow. The heavy scent of decaying foliage and salt water drifts together, sticky and pungent. You pause at a fork in the path, scanning for markers, a moss-covered rock, a broken branch that might help you find your way back later. You tuck that worry away, folding it into the more immediate need to find fresh water before the sun's heat becomes murderous. You follow a narrow gorge where rainwater has carved a shallow stream. The current is faint, but consistent, trickling over smooth stones that shine like wet silver. You crouch and cup your hands, bringing the cool liquid to your lips. It tastes faintly of earth and algae, but you gulp it down, grateful for any relief. You refill your water pouch twice, stuffing it into your pack beside hardened jerky strips. Sip by sip, you feel your head clear. Dizziness retreats, replaced by a sharper focus. You trace the stream upstream fingers, brushing damp ferns that spring back with a gentle snap. A pair of toucans squawk overhead, their calls echoing through the canopy. You pause to watch them perch on a gnarled branch, beaks curved like boomerangs. A moment of beauty, a reminder that life thrives here in even the most forbidding places. You swallow the lump in your throat and press on, following the stream deeper into the island's belly. The gorge walls close in slick with emerald moss and crawling vines. Sunlight filters down in narrow bands, illuminating tiny motes of mist dancing in the air. You risk a bite of wild fruit, a cluster of rain-kissed berries, dark as olives, peeking from beneath broad leaves. You pluck one, sniff it, and pop it into your mouth. The flavor is sour and metallic, and your tongue tingles as you swallow. You chew another more cautiously and find a fleeting sweetness before a bitter aftertaste. You nibble 3 more, each one a gamble, but your hunger wins out. You jot a mental note. These are edible, but only in small amounts. A rash of red dots on your wrist reminds you that even survival snacks carry risks. You stand and stretch, listening for the distant crash of waves against the cliffs, a steady metronome that contrasts with the forest's cacophony of insects and birds. You realize you're thirsty again. You stoop by the stream bank and fish out your now emptied canteen, refilling it with trembling hands. The water has run clear since you last drank, but you drop a purification tablet in anyway, watching it fizz, before capping the container and shaking it gently. You heft your pack and decide to scout for other water sources. You leave the stream and push uphill vines, snagging at your legs, thorny branches raking your forearms. Sweat beads on your brow despite the cool morning air. Your muscles protest with every step, calves burning, quads quivering under the pack's weight. But you force yourself upward, drawn by the promise of a higher vantage point. Maybe from above, you can spot a waterfall, a pond, anything that might hold fresh water in better supply. At the crest of a low hill, you collapse behind a broad banana leaf and pull out a handful of jerky. You chew deliberately, letting the smoky flavor ground you as your lungs gulp in the oxygen-rich air. You glance around, the canopy stretches, uninterrupted, only broken by the occasional silver gleam of water. You scan the distant horizon where the treetops meet the sky, trying to make sense of shapes and angles. But the tangle is relentless, an unbroken quilt of green. You swallow the last of the jerky and wash it down with a generous sip of water. You feel a twinge of hope return. You map a rough bearing, the shoreline must curve east somewhere below you. If you head downhill along that axis, you might find a larger creek or even a small lagoon. You stand and tap your pack's frame, willing those metal poles to straighten your crooked posture. Descending is slower than ascending. Loose stones give way underfoot, and at one point you slip, arms flailing before your right knee slams into a mossy boulder. A gasp escapes you, but you push yourself upright and press on, ignoring the sting. Your hands smear with greenish grime as though you're carrying the forest's secrets on your palms. You slip again in a puddle of mud, splattering your shirt with filthy water. You curse under your breath, words swallowed by the canopy above. At last, the foliage thins. Sunlight becomes a persistent glow rather than a filtered whisper. You approach what looks like a dry riverbed, a wide bed of pale stones and driftwood snags. It lies cracked and barren now, but you recall how sometimes these beds fill during heavy rains, creating hidden pools that hold water days later. You step into the channel and notice a depression beneath rocks, a shallow hole carved by past currents. You crouch and pry away smaller stones, revealing a glistening pool of stale water. It's murky and choked with tiny insects, but it's water. You scoop it into your canteen after filtering it through your shirt, then top it off with another purification tablet. Your breath hitches as you lean back, realizing how precious this find is. You've secured enough hydration to press on through the day. You lean forward and trace patterns in the mud with your fingertips, marking the pool's location in case you need to revisit. You unstrap your empty pouch and fill it from your canteen, sipping as you work. Feeling more confident, you decide to forage for plants. You remember a guidebook note: young palm shoots can be eaten raw when they're still tender, and certain vines yield edible tips. You follow the dried riverbed a little farther until you spot a cluster of young palms reaching for sunlight. You press your thumbs into the base of one shoot, creating a small split, and you peel back fibrous layers to reveal a pale interior. You slice off a thin slice with your pocket knife and crunch down. It tastes watery and faintly nutty, hardly a feast but sustenance. You gather several more shoots, tucking them into a makeshift leaf bundle. Nearby, you identify a creeping vine with trifoliate leaves and tiny yellow flowers. You pluck a leaf and rub it between your fingers, no burning sensation, so you nibble a tip. It tastes grassy, almost succulent. You tear off a length, chew it, and swallow. It's edible but bitter enough to remind you to ration these wild greens carefully. Sun climbs higher and a bead of sweat slips off your forehead into your eye. You pause at the edge of the dry bed, scanning the horizon. The island feels both vast and intimate in this golden light. You inhale deeply, filling your lungs with humid air, thick with promise and peril. Fresh water, wild food, you've secured the basics for another day. The island has tested you already, but you've answered with resourcefulness. You strap your scavenged plants to your pack and gather your emptied containers. You follow the riverbed back toward the dense jungle, retracing your path by counting steps between landmarks, a crooked boulder, a fallen log with oddly twisted roots. You remind yourself to stay alert. This is only day one, and Snake Island is anything but forgiving. You anticipate the next challenge, finding shelter deeper in the ruins that you glimpsed at night. But for now, you've broken camp, found water, and scavenged food. You have momentum, and in survival, momentum is everything. You step off the riverbed and into the shadowed forest once more, pack heavier, but spirit lighter. Every rustle could be a snake, every flash of light a glint of water. You press forward, heart steadying, mind sharpening. Daybreak search begins, and you are alive to see it. You move silently through the undergrowth, every step a negotiation between survival and exposure. Fern fronds slap against your forearms like warning flags, and your boots slip on hidden roots slick with morning dew. Hunger tugs at your gut, urging you onward, but each pocket of sunlight you pass reveals another risk, a coiled shape under a leaf, the glint of scales against damp earth. You crouch low, scanning for edible berries tucked among thorny bushes, but you're painfully aware that one wrong reach could invite a strike you can't outrun. Your eyes catch on a patch of red berries clustered on a low-lying vine. They're ripe and plump, tempting in the way all survival snacks are bright specks of promise in a muted world. You remind yourself of the lesson: only forage, where you've clearly identified the plant, and eat sparingly until you're sure. You kneel and gently part the vine's tendrils, careful to avoid the thorns that bristle like silent sentinels. You pinch a berry between thumb and forefinger, inspect it for blemishes, then drop it into your mouth. The flavor is sweet with a hint of tartness, a welcome jolt against the lingering taste of jerky and boiled palm shoots. You swallow and wait, listening to your body for any sign of distress. Nothing good. You pop 3 more berries in quick succession, then stuff a handful into your pocket for later. A sudden rustle on your left makes your heart leap into your throat. You freeze, muscles taut, and listen. The forest seems to inhale around you. Even the cicadas hold their breath. A long, slender shape slides across a patch of bare dirt 50 feet away, moving with the sinuous grace of a skilled stalker. You tense every fiber in your body. You know that the golden lancehead viper endemic to this island will strike first and ask questions later. You tighten your grip on your walking stick, its knobby end a crude but comforting weapon. You inch backward, careful to maintain eye contact, though the snake's head is swiveled, tracking your retreat. Small pebbles crunch beneath your toe, but you manage not to flinch. The serpent pauses, tongue flicking, tasting the air. You hold your breath, willing the moment to stretch out to give you time. Then, with almost imperceptible movement, it vanishes into the shadows beneath a tangled thicket. Your breath comes out in a shuddering exhale that you taste in your own mouth, a metallic reminder of how close you just came. You rub your sweaty palms on your pants, forcing yourself to calm down. No panic, not yet. You continue on a parallel path, but your mind races with every conceivable outcome. What if you stumble across a nest? What if you misidentify a plant? The island's law is simple: you survive only if you respect the danger. You spot another patch of low shrubs bearing small black fruits. You squat again, tucking your hair behind your ear, and examine the berries. They're clustered like grapes, but smaller, about the size of a marble. You crunch one between your teeth. It's earthy, almost astringent, but safe enough. You pocket a dozen and move on, stashing them in a folded leaf you fashioned into a pouch. Your stomach growls, a low, insistent rumble that echoes through the still forest. You glance at your watch. Dawn has passed, and the sun's rays now cut through the canopy in pale shafts of gold. Time is slipping away faster than you expected. You remind yourself to ration rations to pace yourself, but your body argues for immediate satisfaction. You find a mossy log and sit peeling off one of the black berries and chewing it slowly, savoring the slight sweetness. You scan your surroundings, twisted tree trunks, hanging vines, and every shadow that could conceal a predator. You eat 3 more berries and secure the rest in your pack's side pocket. You rise and press deeper into the forest. Roots rise like spines beneath your feet, and you use your stick to probe the earth ahead, testing for hidden holes or snakes coiled in wait. The foliage thickens, branches brushing your cheeks, each movement sending a shower of tiny insects onto your neck. You swat them away, chest prickling with 1,000 pinpricks. You remember the makeshift repellent you coated on earlier, a dubious mixture of crushed leaves and a dab of coconut oil, and wonder if it still works. Probably not. You shake your head and focus on the next foraging target, the wild ginger patches you spotted on your initial hike. The roots can be chewed raw for a peppery zing that boosts morale and wards off nausea. After 10 minutes of winding through tree trunks, you find the ginger. The broad, heart-shaped leaves cluster close to the ground, and you kneel again, this time scraping away moist soil with a flat rock until the pale rhizome appears. You slice off a thumbnail-sized piece with your pocket knife and bite down. A sharp heat floods your mouth, clearing haze from your mind. You spit bits of fibrous pulp into the undergrowth, grateful for the burn that carries away fatigue. You stash the remaining rhizome in a dry section of your pack, reminding yourself to use it sparingly. The ground trembles under a distant rumble, no, not an earthquake, but heavy thunder rolling through the mountains behind you. The sky above the canopy is a bruised purple, warning you that another storm could be on its way. You weigh the urgency of gathering more food against the looming weather. Better to harvest quickly and retreat to shelter before the downpour starts. You spot a small clearing up ahead, illuminated by a thin beam of sunlight. In its center stands a low bush bursting with bright yellow flowers and tiny green fruits. A quick inspection tells you these are edible seeds similar to the quinoa you once cooked back home. You pinch a seed pod, rub it between your fingers to remove its protective hull, and pop the seed into your mouth. A nutty, mild taste bursts across your tongue. You smile despite yourself. Tonight's dinner just got a little more interesting. Just as you finish sampling, a sudden flicker of movement catches your eye. You turn and see the serpentine body of a coral snake coiled among the roots 10 feet away. Its vibrant bands of red, black, and yellow warn of a venomous bite that can kill in minutes. Your hand flies to your pack, clutching the radio you brought just in case, but you didn't bring a radio, just your whistle and a cracked mirror for signaling. You swallow hard and creep backward, careful not to turn your back. Sweat beads on your forehead despite the cool air. The snake watches uninterested in you as long as you're not infringing on its territory. After a heartbeat that stretches like elastic, the snake uncurls and glides off into the undergrowth, disappearing as quietly as it appeared. You stand frozen for another moment, then exhale a shuddering breath and rub your temples. Your mind races. Each edible find has come with a near miss, each snack tinged with the threat of venom. You realize that foraging here isn't a leisurely pursuit, it's a high-stakes gamble. You pat your pockets, ensuring the berries, seeds, and ginger are secure, then rise and check the sky. No rain yet, but clouds pool overhead like ink dropped in water. You decide to head back toward the ruins where you found shelter on night 1. There you can sort and count your supplies, eat properly, and rest. You map a mental path, follow the line of palm trees, skirt the rocky outcrop, then veer inland toward the crumbling stones. You push through a tangle of vines and emerge onto a narrow ridge that overlooks the beach. Below, the sand is streaked with rainwater, the tide creeping in beneath leftover driftwood. You scan the horizon, no boats, no helicopters, no rescue yet. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch and slide down the ridge boots, digging into soft earth. A small slip nearly sends you tumbling, but you catch yourself on a rock and crouch, heart pounding. You glance back, the ridge marks the halfway point to your nocturnal refuge. You focus on your breathing, inhaling salty sea air mixed with the forest's damp earth. It steadies you. At last, you crest the final rise and spot the ruins' moss-covered stones stacked in a semicircle, walls crumbled but still high enough to block wind. You make your way toward them, grateful for the brief reprieve from the jungle's claustrophobia. As you step into the shadow of the stones, you feel the weight of your pack settle onto the ground beneath a broken ledge. You exhale fully, knees buckling, and sit on a flat slab of rock. You pull out your gathered provisions, berries, seeds, ginger, and lay them on a dry piece of cloth you folded earlier. You survey your haul enough to supplement the jerky and palm shoots, but not a feast. You close your eyes and press the back of your hand to the cold stone, feeling the island's ancient heartbeat beneath your fingers. You've foraged under threat, danced past vipers, and emerged with sustenance. You survived this round, but the jungle's appetite is insatiable, and as the sky darkens, you know the next challenge is always waiting. You wake to the acrid scent of damp stone and the distant drip of water through crumbled walls. Your body aches, in every joint muscles you didn't know existed are screaming in protest, but hunger gnaws sharper. You sit up, brushing moss from your pants, and survey the grim tableau. The half-collapsed alcove where you sheltered feels more like a tomb at dawn. You tuck your radio mirror signaling kit deeper in your pack and rise on stiff legs. Daylight filters through gaps above, spotlighting motes of dust that dance like restless spirits. You set out along the jagged perimeter of the ruins, scanning the ground for threats and opportunities alike. Every stone is slick with algae, every root a potential tripwire. Your skin prickles as though the island itself is warning you, beware. You tighten your grip on your walking stick and press forward, aware that each step could bring you face to face with the island's most lethal resident, a snake whose venom can kill a grown man in under an hour. Just beyond the eastern wall, you spot a narrow cleft where vines cascade like a green waterfall. Heat and humidity swirl within it, and you swear you hear a soft hiss echoing off the stones. Curiosity mingles with dread. You know that snakes seek cool, damp crevices during the midday heat. You swallow, heart pounding, and edge closer, kneeling to peek inside. Moist earth glistens, and your flashlight reveals coiled shapes in the shadows. Your breath catches. 2 golden lance heads rest, bodies coiled in deadly elegance, heads tucked beneath broad coils. Time halts. Your mind races retreat and risk alerting them, or freeze and hope they stay hidden. You remember the survival guide's warning: maintain eye contact and back away slowly. Never turn your back. You lower your flashlight, avoiding direct glare, and press a finger to your lips, breathing quiet. Each exhale sounds too loud in your own ears. You inch backward, inch by inch, scanning to ensure neither serpent rises. The air feels thick, every breath soaked with potential poison. The hiss comes again, sharper, closer. A lancehead's head lifts its tongue, flicking. You lock eyes with it, unblinking, as fear ripples through your body. Memories flood the fisherman's tale of a man bitten on the calf, slipping into paralysis before rescue arrived too late. The warning sign at the island's docking point, a stylized snake fang, dripping blood. You swallow, legs trembling, inching away, until the throb of your pulse slows to something resembling calm. Behind you, the dry stone of the ruins clicks as pebbles shift underfoot. You turn your head just enough to confirm you've cleared the cleft without drawing attention. A loud crack echoes a falling vine snapping against rock. Both snakes whip their heads upward, venomous fangs bared in a flash of deadly intent. Your heart lurches and adrenaline floods your veins. You break into a careful retreat stick raised like a baton of defiance. The lanceheads shift muscles, rippling beneath scales, but they don't pursue. You reach the open aisle between walls and collapse against cool stone, breath ragged. You press a hand to your chest, feeling each furious beat. Adrenaline spikes, then fades, leaving trembling limbs in its wake. You sip water, letting the cool liquid wash down the metallic taste in your mouth. Your mind replays every detail of the encounter, the coil's sheen, the deadly stillness, the hiss that could strip skin from bone. You press a thumb to your wrist, feeling the pulse slow, and vow no more needless risks. But survival demands courage measured, not reckless. You tuck your stick under your arm and rise, shaking off the terror like wet clothing. Your legs carry you through a narrow corridor of collapsed stones and hanging vines toward the western edge of the ruins. There, sunlight strikes a small pocket of sandy soil where insects cluster. You know snakes avoid sun-warmed areas. Maybe you can forage safely here. You kneel and dig lightly, uncovering a cluster of small white tubers, wild yams according to your guidebook, and pull them free. Their slightly sweet aroma offers a momentary comfort. You wash them in your canteen and bite into one. Firm and starchy, it fills the emptiest hollows in your stomach. You chew thoughtfully, eyes scanning the dark underbrush for any sign of flickering scales. A bright scorpion scuttles across the soil, pincers raised. You freeze, then gently brush it aside with your stick, careful not to disturb it too much. The island is littered with dangers big and small. You learn to respect even the tiniest predator. Fuller now, but still cautious, you explore the sunlit niche further and find hollow reeds that could serve as water carriers or signal horns if needed. You snap several lengths and stuff them into your pack. Each item is a small victory, a piece of armor in the daily war against Snake Island's lethality. A distant rumble warns of a gathering storm, so you head back into the ruins where thick stone offers some protection. You set up your rudimentary camp again, on ledges high enough that rising water from another flash flood won't reach you. You reinforce the perimeter by stacking loose bricks, creating a low wall to deflect rain. You spread a tarp on a flat stone to keep your belongings dry, then sit and gather your thoughts. Your body still thrums with the echo of the lancehead encounter. You untie a bandage from your pack and wrap it around your wrist, a crude ritual of reclaiming control over your fear. You jot a note on a scrap of paper: avoid clefts, maintain distance, always back away. You let the words sink in. Every lesson here is paid for in sweat and near misses. Shadow shifts along the broken archway as evening light slips below the canopy. You strike flint and steel, coaxing fire to life once more, and sit beside the flicker. Each crackle is a reminder that you faced down death and are still here. Hunger pangs return, and you roast a yam quarter over the ember's flesh, turning sweet and caramelized. As darkness gathers, you reflect on the day's ordeal. The island tested you with venomous residents and hidden threats, but you responded with caution and respect. You realize survival is not heroic bravado, but humble adaptation. You press a hand to the stone ledge, whispering thanks to whatever forces keep that fire alive. You squeeze your walking stick, now scarred with forest grime and your own handprints, and settle in for the night. Lightning flickers beyond the ruins, and you draw your jacket tighter. Tonight the island's deadliest beasts remain at bay, lulled by distance and light. You smile a calm resolve, softening the edges of fear. Snake Island's heart is venomous, but yours beats stronger when tempered by respect and caution. You close your eyes against the dancing firelight and let dreams carry you through darkness. You vault over a fallen column, boots slapping against the cracked stone floor, and press your palm against the cold, damp wall of the ancient sanctuary. Moss cushions your fingers, and you feel the island's secrets pulsing beneath the surfaces. Beyond you, the forest presses in a living sea of green that would swallow you whole if not for these crumbling walls. Your chest heaves, lungs burning from the climb, but relief floods your veins. You found shelter. Light filters through gaps in the broken ceiling, painting mottled patterns on the flagstones. You step inside the largest alcove, where half a sandstone arch still stands against a jagged silhouette of sky. Roots snake through the masonry as if nature itself is claiming these stones back. You kick aside rubble chunks of flaked mortar, brittle and sharp, and find a flat ledge about waist high. You drop your pack and peer over the edge. Below stretches a shallow pit, once perhaps a ritual basin, now filled with leaf litter and rainwater. You rub grit from your palms and pull out your tarp. Stretching it between two jutting pillars, you create a makeshift lean-to its slope, shedding water toward the pit below. You secure edges with flat stones you've gathered, pressing them into the margin of fabric. The shelter stands firm, a fragile roof against the next downpour. You take a step back, nodding as though satisfied by a master mason's approval. You unstrap your pack and inventory its contents: half-eaten tubers, wilted palm shoots, bundled in leaves, a canteen clinking with purified water, a handful of yellow seeds still nestled in their pods, a scrap of mirror, and your trusty pocket knife. Each item whispers promise. You arrange them on a flat slab beneath your lean-to, grouping food to your left and tools to your right. You pat the layout, building a sense of order amidst chaos. A cool breeze drifts through the alcove, carrying the distant roar of waves. You press your back against the wall, leaning into the solidity of stone. Your back protests, but the ache is a small price to pay for safety. You rub your neck, and the scrape of sand against your jacket reminds you this place isn't a palace. It's a refuge built by decay. Sunlight shifts, and you trace patterns on the floor, faint carvings of serpentine shapes, circles and spirals that hint at forgotten rituals. You crouch to examine them, fingertips tracing the grooves. You imagine priests centuries ago, feet bare, chanting as they moved through these halls. You wonder if they worshipped the same snakes that now hunt you. A shiver crawls up your spine, but you press on, admiring the craftsmanship beneath the layer of overgrowth. Hunger nudges you back to your provisions. You slice a section of yam and roast it against a flat stone, warmed by the sunlit opening. Its edges crisp, and you nibble, savoring the sweet contrast to the day's bitter challenges. You sip water between bites, each swallow soothing the dryness lodged in your throat. You close your eyes, letting warmth of the sun and fullness of your belly anchor you in the moment. For the first time since you arrived, the island's oppressive tension loosens its grip. But refuge encourages reflection, and you scan the alcove for weaknesses. A gap under the arch, just wide enough for creeping rain to trickle through, drips steadily onto a patch of moss. You press a flat rock beneath the drip, redirecting moisture into a small pool. You fill your canteen, nodding at this bonus haul. Dehydration loses a little of its threat. Your gaze rests on a slender opening high on one wall, a narrow window choked with vines. You stand on tiptoe, draw a small knife, and slash at the greenery. Tendrils fall away, revealing an iron grate barred with rusted metal. Beyond it, a view of the shoreline glimmering under midday sun. You slide the blade between bars and wedge it against stone, testing for leverage. With effort, one vertical bar shifts, opening a gap wide enough to slip your head through. You rock forward and peer out. The beach stretches empty, a swath of pale sand dotted with driftwood, the same spot you camped your first night. Then farther west, you spot a dark smudge, the ruins of another structure half swallowed by the jungle. You withdraw your head and grin. Scouting through that window gives you options. You can explore for tools or clear a landing zone for rescue. You jab a thumb at the grate. This is your lookout, you mutter. You trace the wall around the window, finding a sturdy stone to use as a makeshift stool. You prop it beneath the opening and clamber up, body tense as you test your weight. From this vantage, the verdant canopy unfolds in every direction. The ocean's roar is a steady hum below, and the horizon blurs where sky meets water. You crouch, imagining a helicopter skimming the coastline, a heat signature shining like a beacon. You tap the spare mirror against the bar, sending a pinpoint of light dancing across the trees. You hold the flash for a moment, then drop the mirror back inside. Your heart flutters, signaling might work, might fail, but you've done something. Action conquers helplessness. You descend and sit back on your ledge. You pull an old notebook from your pack, pages damp at the corners, and flip to a blank sheet. You jot notes: shelter alcove with lean-to, drip pool, filling canteen. Window vantage west structure. Mirror flashes for signal. You sketch quick diagrams of the alcove's layout, marking the grate's position. Every note reinforces your feeling of agency. Fatigue tugs at your eyelids. Adrenaline that carried you here ebbs. You close the notebook and place it on the stone beside your pack, covered by the tarp's shadow. You lean back, letting your head rest against the cool masonry. You inhale the smell of moss and ancient dust, a scent both eerie and comforting. The world outside the island's dangers, its lethality feels shuffled to the edges. A sudden chirp of insects draws your attention to the ground. A tiny gecko skitters across your boot, its bright eyes reflecting the sun. You smile. Even life finds a way here. You reach down, holding still, until the gecko scurries onto your finger. It pauses unafraid, then darts away into a crack. You watch it vanish, marveling at nature's resilience. You turn your gaze back to the horizon beyond the grate. The ocean shimmers in the late afternoon glow. You press both hands against the bars and whisper, "I'm still here." You know the pull of fear will come again, no refuge lasts forever. But for now, within these crumbling walls, you have built a sanctuary. The island will challenge you again tomorrow, but you have met its threats with ingenuity and grit. Sun dips lower and shadows stretch across the floor. You stand and begin to stack more stones around the lean-to's base, reinforcing your shelter before nightfall. Each rock placed is a small promise I will endure. You hum a soft tune, a survival mantra, as the world outside darkens. You light a small fire on a raised slab, careful to keep embers contained. You roast the last of your seeds until they pop, scattering nutty fragments that you crunch with satisfaction. You sip water once more, each gulp a victory. With twilight creeping in, you settle onto the ledge, lean your head back, and watch your fire's glow flicker against ancient stone. Darkness will come soon, and with it, the island's nocturnal threats. But you are ready. You've claimed this alcove, fortified it with tools and wits, and your mind hums with plans. Shelter in ruins your home for the night. Thunder rumbles like a freight train, in the distance vibrating through the stone walls beneath my palms. I'm perched on the ledge of the alcove when the first fat drops of rain hammer the tarp above me, drumming a frantic tattoo. My heart lurches. This isn't a drizzle, it's the precursor to a flash flood. I scramble to my feet, chest tight, and yank the tarp's corner to reinforce the lean-to's slope. Water sluices off the edge in rivulets pooling beneath the stone at my feet. I grab my canteen and set it under the worst drip spots, but I barely register the extra water. My mind races with every warning. I barely heeded. Rainwater turns shallow channels into roaring torrents in minutes. The thin trench I dug around my first night's camp flashes in my memory. What I thought was clever then pales against the fury of a tropical storm. I shove the scrap of mirror and notebook into a ziplock in my pack, then tie it shut with trembling fingers. Rain intensifies into a white blur. I press my back against the mossy wall, hands flat against the cool surface to steady myself and peer through the vine-choked window. The shoreline disappears behind sheets of water, and the collapsed ruins I mapped just yesterday vanish under a curtain of liquid. The floor of the alcove grows slick water, creeping along the flagstones like tendrils of a giant sea creature. I plant the barrel of my walking stick against a stone pillar and take stock of my supplies, tubers, seeds, berries, the last palm shoots, nothing heavy enough to weigh me down, but enough to sustain. A sudden crack rends the air, a massive branch snapping off a nearby tree. The sound echoes like a gunshot. I flinch and stumble over a flat slab, nearly sending a half-roasted yam tumbling into the rising pool. I snatch it back, rescue it from oblivion, but my hands are slick and I almost lose my balance. My lungs burn as I swallow, forcing a calm I don't feel. "Move," I hiss to myself, repeating it until my thoughts align. I slide down from the ledge boots, hitting the sloped floor with a splash. Water swirls around my ankles, then calves, then knees as I leave the alcove's relative safety. I weave between stone pillars, each step a gamble on the moss-covered ground. Visibility is low, rain drips down my face, stinging my eyes. I squint through the cascade and spot my path toward the higher ruins above the island's ridge. If I can reach that platform, I can weather the flood on dry ground. I push through a curtain of vines at the alcove's mouth and charge into the deluge. Rain whips at me, soaking through every layer. My shirt clings to my skin like a second shell. I slip on submerged moss and pitch forward, arms flailing, before I catch a column's edge. Gasping, I right myself and press on. Fear roars in my ears. If this storm catches me midstream, I could be swept into the ocean or dashed against coral rocks. I picture being a leaf in a torrent, powerless and torn. Water cascades around me, knee-deep now, and I wade directly into the narrow trench scoured by last night's downpour. The dirt banks have collapsed, and the channel has widened into a churning veg of mud and debris. I grit my teeth, hug my pack close, and slog forward. Each step is resistance, as though I'm pushing through a wall of thick clay. Branches catch my sleeves. Vine tendrils wrap around my ankles, and I tug at them until they snap free. Suddenly, a wave of water surges behind me, flash flood releasing its pent-up fury. I spin, heart pounding, and my right foot barely finds purchase. I lurch sideways, pack slapping wet stone, and a roar of water fills my senses. I taste metallic terror on my tongue. I slam my stick into the swirling current, brace against the pillar, and dig my heels into the mud. Water pounds my chest muscles, strain against the pressure, and I refuse to let go. Time stretches seconds, swelling into eternity. I picture every snake, every hidden rock waiting downstream, and I know that giving way would mean being tossed like a rag doll. I whisper under my breath, "Not today," and grit my teeth. The torrent ebbs as quickly as it rose, leaving behind a sludgy bustle of foam and leaves. I stagger forward, boots suctioned in mud, but I move step by agonizing step toward firmer ground. At last I reach a rocky outcrop that juts above the floodline. I haul myself onto it, limbs trembling, and lie there gasping. Rain hammers my back, soaking the mud that coats every inch of me, but at least I'm not drowning. I press a hand to the stone, feeling its solidity beneath me, and close my eyes. I can still hear water roaring down the ruined corridors, chasing me like the island's wild heart unleashed. I force myself upright and wring out my jacket as best I can, then catch sight of a narrow staircase carved into the stone behind me, half hidden by creeping vines. I remember spotting it while surveying from the window and realize it leads to a raised platform above the alcove. Climbing there will keep me safe until the storm passes. I pull my pack onto my shoulders, water sloshing inside, and step toward the moss-slick stairs. Each step is a calculated risk. I wedge my stick in a crevice to steady my rise and haul myself upward. The vines overhead drip a steady trickle that follows me up, but the floor remains largely dry. I push past the final sprig of greenery and emerge onto a flat terrace, a waist-high wall circling the edge. Rain pelts me head-on here, but the platform stands above the worst of the flood. I plant my stick upright against a stone pillar and sweep the terrace for branches or stones to weight down my tarp, which I know will disintegrate if left loose. I anchor the corners with flat rocks and toss my jacket inside the shelter. I lower my pack, gently mindful of the mud clumps that stick to its fabric. I unzip it and pull out a spare tarp corner and some cord reinforcing the lean-to, so it won't tear in the wind. Every knot I tie feels shaky in my numb fingers, so I double the loops and tense my jaw until the world is nothing but the rhythm of hands working cord and the thunder that rattles the sky. A lull in the rain offers a breath, though only for a moment, before the next downpour resumes. I light a small fire in a hollowed-out niche of stone, gnarled twigs, and wood scraps from earlier expeditions crackle in a feeble defiance of the storm. Smoke whips off the flames, but it's enough to signal that someone's here, someone who's still in the fight. I slip the half-roasted tuber from my pack and nibble at it, the smoky sweetness grounding me in this precarious moment. Lightning forks overhead, illuminating the terrace in stark white. I can see the ocean's frothy mouth far below, waves crashing against the rocky shoreline, but up here I'm separated by solid rock. I sip water and lean against the wall, letting the storm's energy drain from my limbs. I realize that Snake Island doesn't relent. It floods the hollow tests, the alcove's strength then carries on. But I'm still here, perched on this platform, soaked through and bedraggled but alive. The rain eases into a drumming whisper, and water recedes back down the carved channels, leaving behind a trail of silt and leaves. I peer over the wall and spot the flooded ruins below. The alcove is a pool now. I nod to myself. This perch was the right call. I scoop fresh water from a newly formed puddle in a stone basin, filter it through my bandana into the canteen and chug deeply. Each gulp is icy cold relief. Night edges closer as the storm's final groans drift away. I collect scattered firewood, sheltered by the terrace's overhang, and feed the embers until they glow bright orange against the gathering dark. I huddle close, knees drawn to my chest, and let the warmth seep into my cold bones. I tap my stick against the wall, a reminder of every step that brought me here. A small gecko emerges from a crack in the stone and ventures onto the ledge beside me. It tilts its head at me, unafraid of the wind and water. I smile and whisper, "We made it, buddy." The world feels both immense and intimate in this moment, the storm stripped away, pretense, leaving only grit bone and the primal will to survive. The wind fades to a sigh, and I pat the stone edge, murmuring thanks. Tonight the island's flood unleashed its power, but within these walls and on this platform, I found higher ground. For now I'm safe, tomorrow I'll press on. But tonight I breathe, I rest, and I remember that perseverance is my greatest shield. You wake to the whisper of wind through cracks in the terrace wall, the embers of last night's fire reduced to glowing coals. Rain-streaked vines drip overhead as you press your cheek to the cool stone, savoring the island's fresh morning breath. Your muscles protest with every movement, but you steel yourself. Today's priority is gathering tools and resources that could tip the odds in your favor. You crane your neck to peer over the ledge. The shoreline stretches below, littered with driftwood and debris the storm has carried in. If you want durable shelter weapons or containers, that wreckage is your best bet. You haul your pack onto your shoulders and descend the narrow stairs, each step still slick with lingering moisture. At the base, you pat your pockets, ensuring your knife, mirror, and whistle are within easy reach. You tighten the straps across your chest and step out into the cool morning haze. The terrace's rough flagstones give way to uneven rubble, then to soft earth as you approach the jungle's edge. You can taste salt in the air now. The ocean's pulse is a constant metronome, guiding you downward. Pushing through the final tangle of vines, you emerge onto the beach sand, swirling around your ankles. The tide is low, revealing a treasure trove of flotsam, splintered planks, knotted ropes, a rusted metal crate half buried in coral sand. You crouch and sift through the wet sand with gloved hands, careful to avoid razor-sharp shells and coral fragments. A battered wooden board, smooth from seawater, catches your eye. You lay a hand across its surface, solid, wide enough for a makeshift paddle or crude spear shaft. You haul the board out of the sand and balance it on your shoulder, then spot lengths of frayed rope wrapped around a broken buoy. You tug at the thick fibers, testing their strength. They hold. You coil several feet around your arm, knowing you can use it for tying traps or reinforcing shelter. Beneath the buoy, you uncover a battered metal canteen, its seal corroded but easily replaceable with a strip of cloth and a vine binding. You pop the lid, sniff the stale metal tang, probably not safe for water, but excellent for boiling or storing dried goods. You stand and scan the beach. Beyond the washed-up debris, the jungle begins its silent siege routes, inching toward the sand. You note the direction of the crumbling dock remains jutting into the surf. The rotted beams could supply sturdy poles for spears or fishing shafts. You pocket the canteen, toss the rope coil over your shoulder, and stride toward the dock's skeleton. Wading through knee-deep water, you grip a barnacled beam and heave. Slippery and heavy, it resists, but you find a secure handhold and pull. Your back arches as salt water sluices over your boots, then you manage to roll the beam onto the shore. At a glance, it measures nearly 8 feet, perfect for a walking staff or spear. You drag it onto the sand and set it down beside your board, forming a pile of soon-to-be tools. Your fingers tremble as you dig your pocket knife into the beam's fibrous wood, scoring a lengthwise groove. You sand away barnacles with a piece of coral, revealing fresh wood beneath. A nearby stone shaped like a hatchet head waits in the drift. You pick it up and pound the board's end against the sand to straighten a kink, then wedge the stone into the groove. It's crude, but when secured with cordage from the rope, it forms a formidable chisel hatchet, ideal for shaping wood or digging tough roots. Feeling a surge of pride, you test the tool on a small driftwood branch. The makeshift blade bites into the grain, shaving off thin curls with satisfying ease. You wipe sweat and seawater from your brow and tuck the new hatchet into your pack's side loop. With this, edge-carving, cutting, and hollowing tasks will become exponentially easier. You shift your gaze to the rusted metal crate. Its sides are pitted and warped, but the bottom is intact. You pry open the lid with your knife and peer inside empty. You heft the crate, noticing the jagged edge where the lid folded. A quick swipe with the coral brush removes sand, and you realize it can serve as both a container for water heating and a cooking pot of sorts. You straighten the jagged edge against a rock, then pad the sharp lip with a strip of cloth from your jacket's lining, better than bleeding on your tools. You strap the crate to your pack's exterior with rope securing it snugly. Your load is heavier now, but these items could salvage your days here. You pat the collection of board beam, rope, hatchet, and crate with satisfaction. You inventory in your mind: cooking pot, water heater, cutting tool, spear, shaft, paddle. Tomorrow you'll refine each tool, fashioning spear points and paddle blades, but for now the raw materials are yours. Ahead, the jungle's green moor beckons. You pause and scan the horizon. No boats, no signs of rescue, only the endless curve of ocean and sky. You draw a breath of salty air, letting it fill your lungs, and then stomp through the sand toward the vegetation line, roots grabbing at your boots. You follow a faint trail of broken shells and decaying leaves, the path you took in days 1 and 3, back toward the ruins. Each step echoes between beach and forest, a reminder of the threshold you've crossed, civilization's remnants on one side, raw wilderness on the other. As you re-enter the jungle, sunbeams pierce the canopy in thin shafts, illuminating drifting motes of dust. You shoulder your pack more firmly and imagine the possibilities: sheltered campfires, gathered fresh water can be boiled in that metal crate, future meals cooked with heat contained, a paddle to push a driftwood raft if you opt to risk the sea. You smile at the thought, though you know venturing into open water is a gamble you might not take. For now, the island's interior demands your focus. You retrace your steps up the ridge, wading through the remains of yesterday's floodplain. Mud clings to your boots, and you pause to scrape off clumps with the hatchet edge. Your hands smell of salt and metal, but pride warms you. You've turned the island's chaos into your arsenal. Each item is proof that ingenuity more than brute strength will carry you through. Reaching the ruins once more, you duck beneath hanging vines and slide into your alcove's lean-to. You set your gear on the flat slab and unstrap the beamboard and crate. Carefully, you unpack the rope coil and ensure each tool is laid out within easy reach. You note how the dawn light filters through the window grate, illuminating the battered crate's dented surface, the hatchet's raw edge, and the smooth grain of driftwood. You sit cross-legged and pull the knife free. Selecting a short branch from the board pile, you begin carving a sharpened point, following the grain and letting the blade guide you. Wood shavings drift across your lap in delicate curls. Each push of the blade feels purposeful, a triumph of human will over nature's indifference. You pause to test the emerging point against a scrap of reed cleanly sliced, no more than a rough sheath. Perfect. You set the spear shaft aside and grip the longer beam. Using the hatchet, you split the end cautiously, creating a forked notch where you can lash a stone point or later attach a spearhead. The wood smells fresh and earthy with each shaved splinter. You tie the split end with rope, creating the beginnings of a sling spear or makeshift club. Finishing your work, you stand and admire your handiwork. 2 spear shafts, one slender, one stout, a hatchet that doubles as a chisel, a metal crate ready for cooking, and a board that could be a paddle or stretcher. Each tool transforms the island's raw debris into lifelines. You feel a thrill of confidence. Distress in the face of danger is still distress, but preparedness breeds calm. You store the finished shafts against the alcove wall, the hatchet within arm's reach, and slide the crate beneath your lean-to. You stash the remaining rope in a loop around a protruding stone. Tools arranged, you dust sand from your hands and lean back, letting the solidity of stone and the promise of your creations settle around you. You cup water from your canteen and sip, reflecting on this morning's expedition. You've scavenged, sculpted, and secured resources that will sustain your days ahead. The island's debris is no longer broken wreckage, it's the raw material of your survival. You press a thumbprint into the crude spear's shaft, imprinting your presence on it. The sun climbs higher and shadows retreat deeper into the alcove. You pocket your knife, pat your pack, and prepare to move on. There are more challenges ahead. Heatstroke, dehydration, venomous creatures, but now you face them armed with tools of your own making. You lift your gaze through the grated window and whisper, "Bring it on," knowing that with each crafted weapon and container, you inch closer to mastering this island. The sun rises to its zenith in a blazing orb of white fire as you step out of the alcove's cool shadow. Heat so intense it seems to radiate through your skin, ignites sweat in rivers down your back. You lift the flap of your lean-to and press your palm to the hot stone slab, willing its residual warmth to drop. But the rock stings under your skin, no refuge here. You squint against the glare, boots crunching on dried palm fronds, and set off along the sun-baked ridge toward the inland plateau. Your throat is parched before you take the first step. Your water canteen weighs heavy at your side, each slosh of liquid, a reminder of how precious each sip must be. You pause every few strides to raise it to your lips, letting cool droplets drip into your mouth, chasing away the metallic tang of dehydration. The air shimmers in waves above the stone, and distant birdsong is drowned by the humming vibration of cicadas, stirred to frenzy by the heat. You feel your chest tighten and your heart hammer against your ribs as if the sun itself were pounding inside you. By the time you reach a small clearing, your shirt is soaked through, clinging to you like a second skin. You drop to your haunches, pressing both hands to your knees, head bowed. Your vision flickers. Bright spots dance at the edges of your sight, and nausea curls low in your gut. Heatstroke isn't a rumor here. It's a predator stalking the vulnerable. You drag a shaking hand from your pocket and press it to your forehead, sticky slick, warmer than normal. You swallow hard, mouth dry, despite the water you carry. You kneel and extend your canteen, pouring water over your wrists. The sudden chill shocks you, cold relief searing through veins. You press the damp skin to your temples, soaking shirt sleeves and letting the evaporative coolness steal away some of the blistering heat. You close your eyes, breath thudding loud in your ears, and count to 10. Focus, breathe, survive. When dizziness subsides enough to stand, you push upright and survey your surroundings, a ring of hardy, scrubby bushes whose leaves are turned silver by the relentless sun. You remember that shading your head and face can buy precious minutes in heat like this. You rip a handful of leaves and fashion a crude sun hat, tying the stems under your chin with frayed rope. The makeshift brim rests unevenly but casts a flickering shadow across your eyes. Each step forward is an ordeal. You stagger across the rocky outcrop hips, swaying legs threatening to buckle. You grip your walking stick with white-knuckled strength, forcing each weight-bearing step until the next. Sweat streams off your chin, soaking the leaf brim and trickling into your eyes. You blink through stinging saltwater tears and press on, reminding yourself that shade and water await if you can just reach the copse of trees ahead. Your throat feels lined with sand. You reach into your pack, pull out the crumpled mirror, and signal with a smooth twist of the wrist. The reflection flares in the sun like a tiny flare dancing on a distant tree trunk. It's a long shot for rescue, but your own determination needs a symbol of hope. You fling the mirror back and stow it away, feeling the spark of agency rekindle. You reach the tree line and slide beneath the canopy's cool embrace. Immediately, humidity presses in, but the temperature drops by several degrees. You exhale shakily, pressing your forehead to the rough bark of a broad-trunked tree, its shade a sanctuary. You slide down to sit cross-legged on the softer forest floor, back against the trunk. You crack open the metal crate tipped inside out to form a shallow basin and pour the last of your undrinkable salt water into it. You grab a handful of dry leaves and pack them underneath, shaking the crate until fine debris filters through the mesh bottom, leaving water that you filter again with your bandana. It's better than nothing. You sip, tentatively pausing at every swallow to breathe. The water is gritty but cold and chills your throat like a blessing. You fill your canteen half full, reserve enough for emergencies. Heatstroke hovers in the corners of your mind. You feel haze in your thoughts, slow drift of consciousness if you pause too long. But you remind yourself the movement is both hazard and remedy. Curl up, and the heat will claim you. Keep moving, but smartly. You stand steadying yourself with a firm grip on the tree's rough bark and stare up at the dappled ceiling of leaves. You consider making a tea from the ginger root you saved. The steam cooling your skin might help regulate your temperature. You pry open your pack and remove a small slice of ginger, then use your pocket knife to shave thin curls into the crate. You pour a ladle of cooled water over the curls and swirl the mix until the essence steeps. The smell of peppery warmth rises in the humid air, and you scoop a teaspoonful into your mouth. A sudden heat blooms in your throat, but then your core feels clearer, your mind sharpened. You exhale sweat evaporating from your skin with a softer hiss. You drink another ladle of ginger infusion, letting its warmth and medicinal bite ground you in the present. You scoop handfuls of the herbal brew onto your hat brim and let the liquid drip onto the leaves above your head, creating a miniature misting system around your face. It's crude, but every drop counts. You lean back and close your eyes, feeling the tree's thick trunk support your weight, its living bark sharing its moisture with the air around you. Time blurs. You sip water and infusion massage your temples and press wet bandana to your neck. Each action, small as it is, reminds your body that you're still alive and in control. You recall your own mantra, persistence shapes the outcome. You make a mental map to the next water source, a stagnant pool you glimpsed yesterday through the window grate, and decide to test it once the heat wanes. You rise after what feels like an eternity and tuck the battered crate back into your pack. Your legs wobble but hold you. You pat your pack's straps and they press a reassuring weight against your shoulders. You step into the undergrowth, guiding yourself by the patterns of light on the forest floor, following a mental breadcrumb trail, fern patch, mossy log, scraggly vine. With each step you focus on form, crisp posture, deliberate foot placement, measured breaths. Sweat beads on your brow, then trickles down your spine. You feel your heart slow from a frantic pace to a determined beat. Dehydration still gnaws, but you've staved off the worst. You recall the tubers waiting in the alcove, another energy boost when you return. You emerge into a narrow ravine where shallow water trickles between stones. You crouch to kneel, dipping your hand into the stream, then splash your face. The sudden cold jolts you back to full awareness. You sip straight from the stream, more earthy than yesterday, but now your body welcomes the clean chill. You fill both canteens, one for drinking, one for dousing your head and neck later if needed. You notice the ravine walls narrow downstream, pooling the water in a small depression beneath a rock ledge. You pluck a nearby fern leaf, fold it into a funnel shape, and direct water into your canteen more efficiently. You pause to catalogue the moment, a minor triumph, water-secured shade found, heat managed. You cup your hands, pour water over your head, and tilt back to let it soak your hair and wick down your neck. The relief is immediate, reaffirming. Standing, you take one last look at the ravine's cool oasis. Then shoulder your pack and set your sights on the next challenge, scouting for higher ground with thicker canopy to protect you from the relentless sun. You take 3 deliberate steps, each planted firmly, each propelled by determination. The heat may burn fiercely, but you burn brighter with resolve. You press on hunger, deferred thirst, managed heatstroke, held at bay by ingenuity and will. You plod onward through the forest's damp underbrush, every footfall. A question will the next step reveal, water or land you face first into mud. The sun is past its peak, and although overhead leaves filter, the light, humidity hangs thick like a wet blanket. Your canteen is half full enough for now, not enough for complacency. Thirst hammers at your temples and your throat feels raw with every swallow. You remind yourself that water isn't just a resource here. It's the lifeline that keeps your mind sharp and your body upright. You recall the muddy rivulets you glimpsed the day before, trickling between tangled roots near a rocky incline. You veer off the main trail, forcing your way through a wall of vines whose barbs latch at your shirt, teasing loose threads from the fabric. You grip your walking stick and push aside low-hanging branches, heart pounding as each rustle might be a snake's flickering tongue. You move slowly, deliberately, testing the ground with your boot tip before transferring weight, wary of quicksand-like mud pockets that could swallow a boot and a bone without warning. Your pace slows as the forest floor gives way to a network of shallow channels carved by rainwater. The mud here is thick enough to tug at your boots, pulling you back with each step. You lift your foot high, allowing the mud to slide off before it cements around your sole, then press forward. Your calves strain and sweat beading on your brow mingles with droplets of perspiration that trickle down your neck. The air tastes of earth and decay, a reminder that what sustains you also harbors hidden threats. Ahead, you spy a narrow rivulet, its water a murky brown ribbon winding between roots and rocks. You crouch and cup your hands, bringing the faint trickle to your lips. It tastes of silt and leaves, but salvation is salvation. You gulp greedily, washing away grit with the promise of more to come. You refill your canteen and shake it, watching suspended particles swirl like tiny storms. You remind yourself to purify it as soon as possible, but your urgent thirst takes precedence. You stand wiping the corners of your mouth with the back of your hand and press deeper into the heart of the rivulet network. The water becomes more significant, a series of shallow pools that glimmer like dull mirrors beneath the canopy. You slip off your pack and kneel by the largest pool, dropping a purification tablet into the center. It fizzes and bubbles, sending ripples across the surface. You set your canteen beneath the inflow to collect the treated water, leaning back against a moss-covered rock to wait. While you work, a soft thud behind you makes you spin. Your walking stick is within reach, and you seize it before turning fully. Nothing but rustling leaves, yet your pulse spikes. You remind yourself every survival move must be precise, even when adrenaline tempts you to lash out. You exhale, knuckles loosening around the stick, and lower your gaze to the water. It's working, little bubbles breaking the surface, releasing cleansing agents. You smile faintly, a small victory in this living maze. Once the water is treated, you pack everything away and lift your canteen to your lips. Each sip is a relief so profound, it feels like an embrace. Your head clears and your stomach settles. You rock back on your heels, scanning the rivulet for a better source upstream. The channel narrows, forcing the water through a constricted gateway between two rocks where it should be cleaner, less laden with sediment. You follow the narrowing channel, teetering on slippery stones. A misplaced step sends you sprawling, pack tumbling off your shoulders. You catch it before it falls into the mud, but the momentum drags you down to your knees. You hiss as cold water slaps your palms, but you're alive and you're closer to fresh water. You push yourself up, heavy pack bouncing, and press on. The channel opens into a small basin where water pools deep enough to cover a hand. You kneel and peer in, dark but clearer than before. You shake out your bandana and use it as an initial filter, pouring water through the cloth into your canteen. It trickles slowly, but you have patience. While it fills you, survey the basin's edge. You notice plant roots trailing into the water, mangrove roots you think known for absorbing pollutants and leaving water relatively clean. Nearby, you see a scrub of slender reeds whose tips shimmer like fresh shoots. If you can drink safely here, you can press farther inland without lugging extra weight. Canteen full, you sit back and rest your forehead against the cool bandana you drape over your eyes. Every fiber of your being sings in relief and exhaustion. You allowed thirst to guide you deeper into the island's veins, and it rewarded you. Yet survival is a chain of such moments, each link fragile. You steady yourself, taking 3 slow breaths, focusing on the rhythm of inhale, exhale, inhale. You rise and wander a few yards downstream, using your knife to slice a narrow steak from a nearby branch. You jam it into the earth by the basin, marking the location should you need to return. You dash a small notch into the steak, counting today's date in scratches. Day 3 marks a milestone. Water quest succeeded. You step back, nodding in satisfaction. Your reflection shimmers in the pool as clouds drift above the canopy. You catch sight of your own sunburned face and grit-stained clothes. You flex your fingers, testing their agility. You feel a sharper edge to your senses. Thirst taught you caution, perseverance rewarded you, and now clarity guides you. You look upstream and see another narrowing channel disappearing around a bend of stone. Curiosity tugs at you. If it leads to a spring, fresh water could be bubbling up here, an unending well. But the jungle beyond thickens, roots coiling across stones. Each step carries risk, insoluble heat, venomous fauna, sudden drops. You weigh the gamble, more water means less rationing. But the farther you go, the more isolated you become. Your pragmatism wins. You've secured enough water to descend toward the beach later today and refill from more stable sources near the shoreline. It's a measured retreat, not surrender. You gather your kit, canteen pack, walking stick, and trace your steps back along the rivulet using your stake as a waypoint. You step carefully, testing each rock before shifting weight, and tuck the bandana into your neck for cooling later. As you move back through the cambers of mud, you feel the ground's soft give underfoot and adapt, lifting knees higher with each stride. You press through the vine barrier you crossed earlier, and at the edge of the undergrowth you pause. Sunlight filters down, warmer and harsher here. You shake loose mud from your boots and roll your shoulders, the ache there a reminder of every laborious step. You spot a broad-leafed plant with natural drip tips, water channels that encourage water to run off leaves. You gather several leaves and tie them together at their stems, creating a makeshift funnel that you can use to collect rain later. You tuck the leaf bundle into your pack, a reminder that improvisation remains your greatest asset. You emerge from the forest and follow the faint trail toward the ruins, hips swaying as you shift weight from one leg to the other. The canopy opens to the sky, the contrast painfully bright. You pull the bandana from your eyes and drape it across your neck, letting the breeze there cool your skin. You sip from the canteen again, savoring the clarity of each mouthful. Reaching the alcove, you park yourself on the stone ledge, canteen resting on your thigh. You tilt your head back and let sun strike your face, eyes closed against the light. You allow yourself a moment. You navigated the island's hidden arteries, faced the gamble between dehydration and deadly terrain, and emerged with victory. The water quest is complete, and with it you've bought yourself time, clarity, and a sharper focus for what lies ahead. You press your palm against the stone, feeling its heat and solidity beneath the breeze. The island might withhold its resources, but with patience and respect, it offers sustenance. You tuck your walking stick within arm's reach and reach for your notebook, marking today's triumph. You pause at the final flourish of ink. Day 3, water rivulet basin success, enough to continue. You close the notebook with a firm snap and lean back, ready to press on. You leave the rivulet's cool embrace and push back into the dense jungle, each step tightening the coil of vigilance in your chest. Your pack still heavy with tools and water presses down on your shoulders, reminding you that survival demands both burden and grit. The sun filters weakly through the canopy, casting a shifting mosaic of light and shadow on the leaf-littered ground. You pause to scan for familiar markers, a twisted root here, a moss-covered boulder there, but the forest rearranges itself like a restless maze, erasing your path. A sudden flicker of movement at the corner of your eye makes you freeze. Your walking stick drops softly to the earth as you crouch low, muscles primed. Two slender bodies, scales gleaming with forest moisture, slither across adjacent branches, uncoiling in unison before vanishing into the underbrush. Your pulse ratchets up. You're in their territory now, a labyrinth of serpent trails where every corridor could be home to a viper's nest. You swallow the lump of panic in your throat and remind yourself snakes avoid open confrontation unless cornered. Quiet steps, steady breath, head swivel, these will carry you through. You tuck your walking stick under one arm and cradle your tools against your ribs, making as little noise as possible. Each rustle of leaves sounds like a warning hiss. Each snapping twig rings like a death knell. You follow a faint depression in the soil, guessing it's a path trodden by countless serpents, slithering between favored hiding spots. The air here feels thicker, as if saturated with their silent presence. You bite back the urge to flee and press onward, lining your gaze just above the ground to catch any flash of patterned scales. Ahead, the trail forks at a leaning tree whose roots arch like the ribs of a buried beast. You pause, glancing left, then right. Both paths look equally unwelcoming. One leads into a thicket so dense you can't see more than a few paces in. The other slopes upward toward rocky outcrops, ringing the campsite's ridge. Logic says the high ground offers better safety, but the serpents could be sunning themselves on those rocks now. You choose the ridge path, heart pounding, as you skirt the tree's base. Vines whip at your ankles, but you move with purpose, probing the path ahead with a small branch. Each tap against leaf-covered stones echoes unnaturally loud. You half expect a snake to lunge, fangs bared, but only silence answers. You let out a breath you didn't know you held. The incline grows steeper, roots forming a natural staircase under your boots. You grasp a root for leverage and haul yourself upward. Then something slides across the root beside your hand, too quick to identify. You yank your hand back, chest tightening. The forest hushes as if holding its breath for the next move. You press your palm against the root's coarse bark, steadying your racing heart, and glance down. A baby snake barely a foot long twines around the root, its yellow-brown pattern blinking at you. You meet its gaze, unblinking, and it retreats, disappearing beneath leaf litter. Relief washes through you, but caution remains. You continue upward, each step deliberate. At the ridge's crest, you emerge into a small clearing ringed with waist-high grasses and scattered boulders. Sunlight breaks through in broad swaths, warming the rocks and casting shadows on the grasses. You scan the ground, no visible snake coils, no flicker of movement. You step into the sunlit circle pack, loosening to your shoulders as you exhale. You press your palm against a sun-warmed boulder and let its heat seep into your bones. Below you spot a faint wisp of smoke rising beyond the ruins, a pre-dawn signal. No, it's too white, too wispy, just the jungle exhaling mist in the morning light. Yet the vision reminds you that signs can deceive. You crouch and run a gloved hand over the grass, searching for tracks. There, a series of shallow depressions, slender like rope imprints, heading west toward the shoreline. You trace them with a finger snake trails not human. You lift your gaze, noting the direction, and decide to navigate around that zone rather than through it. You retrace your footprint-laden path to the clearing's edge and find an alternate opening between two large ferns. The gap is narrow. You squeeze through brush, catching at your shirt sleeves, and emerge onto a flattened patch near the ruins. Heart still thudding, you slide behind a collapsed wall and peer around the corner. The ruined stones rise like silent sentinels, and beyond them stretches your alcove, safe and familiar. A shiver runs up your spine as you spot a fresh snake skin shed across the ruin's entrance, a thick, pale husk patterned with the lancehead's distinctive diamond shapes. Yesterday morning you slept here untroubled. Today a predator tested the walls. You press a thumb to your mouth, stifling a gasp, and lean back against the cold stone. The shedding confirms your suspicion. The snakes patrol these ruins, moving through cracks and crevices in search of smaller prey. You must reroute. You glance up at the window grate where you once signaled for rescue, now partially shrouded by creeping vines. If the snakes can reach that high, so can you, though you fortified it well enough to keep most out. Still, the shed skin is a stark reminder that no shelter is absolute. You press your back against the stone, letting its solidity steady you, and exhale in a slow release. You grip your pack straps and stand, voice firm. Even if only the island can hear you, adapt or die. You pivot away from the alcove entrance and back toward the island's interior. You know that you'll use the ruins only as a waypoint now, not a fortress. You need new terrain, ground so unfamiliar to serpents that their tunnels won't be obvious. You consider descending to the shoreline where stones are smooth and water's presence discourages serpent trails. The beach's open expanse would expose you to sun and sea spray, but snakes seldom linger in direct sunlight on bare rock. Decision made, you set off toward the shoreline, following the smoke-like mist that still lingers in the valley below. You navigate around the snake trails, picking your path by how sunlight falls on the ground. If a patch of earth glistens wet or dry, that suggests recent activity. You avoid damp areas and thick underbrush, favoring sparse stands of shrubs and sunlit clearings. Each step is taken with the awareness that you walk over millions of serpent footsteps, and you must not follow them blindly. After 10 tense minutes, you break through the forest's edge and step onto the rocky shore outside the water-washed arena of debris. The open space is stark, uninviting in its emptiness. Yet your chest eases. No scales, no coils, no silent threats slipping in the undergrowth, only the rhythmic crash of waves. You lay your pack gently on the largest flat stone you can find and stretch muscles trembling from adrenaline and relief. You squat and remove a handful of sand, letting it sift between your fingers. No hiss greets you, just the sea's breath. You fill your hands with seawater and splash your face, tasting salt and freedom. You lean back against a boulder, warmed by the sun, and for the first time since morning, you allow yourself a smile. The hunt through serpent trails nearly cost you more than fear. It cost you time and energy, yet it sharpened your senses and tested your resolve. You pushed through, navigated the maze, and emerged unbit. You stand gathering your pack and run your walking stick's tip along the ground. The island's dangers may roam the jungle, but the shoreline offers reprieve. You lift your gaze to the horizon and whisper, "I know your paths now," before turning inland again. Snakes will have to reroute around you. It's time you commanded the terrain, not merely survived it. You skirt the shoreline's rocky perimeter boots, pounding against jagged stones smoothed by endless tides, and feel the island's pulse shift beneath your face. Driftwood and seaweed litter the beach, but your gaze is fixed upward on the towering cliffs that rise like a stone fortress between you and the dense jungle. The sun hangs low, inching toward evening, and you know that darkness will soon embolden the vipers slithering in the underbrush. Your legs ache from the morning's climb through serpent territory, but this ascent offers advantage height, open air, and advantage over both ocean and forest. You tighten the straps on your pack and begin your slow, deliberate climb. The cliff face is a patchwork of limestone and weathered sandstone, crisscrossed with vertical cracks and horizontal ledges. Your hands seek natural handholds, rough nubs of stone smoothed by wind and rain, and your toes probe for tiny pockets that can bear your weight. Sweat beads on your brow, stinging your eyes, but you blink and keep your focus on the next reachable hold. A misstep here means a long tumble into spiky rocks below. Each movement demands concentration, right hand, left foot, shift weight, then repeat. As you ascend, the sound of waves receding into the distance fades, replaced by a deep silence that only height and exposure can bring. Below the forest's edge recedes in clusters of vipers, black and yellow speckles against leaf litter writhe in thickets, their bodies coiled like living rope. You remind yourself their strike range is short, but close enough to add a sense of urgency to your climb. You pause on a narrow ledge, heart pounding, and peer down. 3 golden lanceheads sun themselves 20 feet below bodies, pulsing in sync. You inhale toes, gripping stone, and ease past them, keeping your own body pressed close to the cooler shade of the cliff. You resume the climb, fingertips chalky with dust and sweat, and notice an outcropping of resilient shrubs clinging to a small crevice. Their tangled roots form a pseudo-ladder of knobby grips. You haul yourself upward, diverting a trickle of sweat from your eyes so you can grasp the nearest root. It holds. A moment's relief floods you as you settle on a broader shelf that feels stable enough to bear your entire weight. You sit back, sliding slightly against the rock, and catch your breath. Below you, the vipers remain still, but you can sense them watching, a silent jury to your intrusion. You glance at your watch, late afternoon. You decide to press higher. Sunset on this cliff could reveal passing ships or planes on the horizon, and the wind will clear your scent and serpents from this elevation. You stand and adjust your hat brim, then continue upward. The rock's texture shifts here, the surface etched with ancient fossil imprints. You pause to trace your fingers over a spiral shell embedded in stone, a reminder that this island holds secrets older than any human memory. You flex your shoulders and reach for a small ledge above, grateful when your fingers find purchase. A sudden scuttling behind you snaps your head around. 2 copperhead vipers, smaller but no less venomous, have emerged from a narrow seam in the rock. They coil on a shelf only a few feet behind you, basking in the slanting sunlight. Panic claws at your chest. The path behind is blocked by their hissing presence. You exhale, reminding yourself of your training. No sudden movements, maintain distance, look for alternative route. You scan the cliff above is a shallow niche barely large enough for you to squirm into. You'll have to slide past the vipers, keeping your body as low as possible. You lower your torso and slide inch by inch toward the niche. The vipers watch, heads lifting, tongues flicking. You keep your breathing steady, inhale through your nose and out through your mouth, each exhale measured. A loose pebble slides under your hand and clatters down 20 feet. You freeze, heart in your throat, but the vipers barely react, somehow accustomed to rockfalls. Encouraged, you inch forward another few inches, boots scrunching against stone dust. At last, your torso is within the niche's shadow. You push your legs up, bending knees so your toes find a higher hold. You're in. You lie flat chest, pressed against cool stone, and slide your pack into the nook beside you, careful not to dislodge anything. You lie there, breathing quietly, listening to vipers hiss below you. Your heart pounds a rapid tattoo as you wait for them to lose interest. Minutes pass and the snakes uncoil, sliding back into cracks and crevices. You exhale the breath you'd been holding and sit up, legs dangling into open air. You stroke dust from your pants and peer out. The ocean unfurls in glimmering swathes to the west, and beyond the forest canopy to the east, you spot the ruins where you've made camp. The path you climbed is clear but narrow. One wrong move and you'd be tumbling. You know you can't stay here forever. You need a place to settle for the night that combines elevation, shelter, and escape routes. You scan the cliff higher and see a plateau rimmed by a ring of jagged boulders, a natural fortress few creatures could breach. The final stretch requires a powerful push. Few handholds remain, but your arms burn at the thought of climbing further. You calculate 15 more feet, each pull risking a slip. But the payoff, the safety of a raised ledge, beckons. You straighten and test your grip on a protruding rock, pushing downward until the surface holds firm. You place your left foot on a tiny nub, flexing calf muscles, then heave your body upward. The stone below your knee scrapes skin through your pants, but you barely notice. You hook your elbow over a flat ledge and yank, then shove your foot higher to meet it. You pull yourself up and roll onto the plateau, dense grass cushioning your fall. You lie on your back, arms, splayed, lungs filling with fresh air, and laugh, relief bubbling up in a ragged exhale that feels like victory. You stand, legs trembling beneath you, and survey your surroundings. This elevated meadow is roughly 10 paces wide, hemmed by stone pillars that jut into the sky like ancient sentinels. Tussocks of grass sway in the breeze, and a lone scraggly tree clings to the edge roots knotted around boulders. You step forward and test the grass-compressed soil holding firm underfoot. You're safe here. No snake could coil among this exposed terrain without baking in the sun. You bend to pick a tuft of grass and palm it, then rub it against your cheek, savoring the softness. You scan the horizon. Dark clouds gather beyond the ocean, promising another storm. You jostle your pack and remove your tarp, draping it over a nearby boulder to catch rain. You tear strips from your jacket's lining to lash corners to stone, creating a primitive shelter that will deflect wind and precipitation. When the structure stands, you tuck the remaining strip of rope into your waist belt for later, then sit on a flat stone beneath the scraggly tree. The breeze is cool here, laced with salt spray, and the island's distant fragrance of jungle rot. You pull out your notebook and sketch the cliff's layout, the niche, the viper's shelves, the plateau's perimeter. You note wind direction and mark your planned exit path down the western face at dawn when snakes are least active. You jot today's date and details: clifftop ledge secure, shelter erected, viper standoff at 20 foot, plateau clear. Your muscles tremble from the climb and adrenaline crash, but the view steadies you. Below the forest is an emerald tide. Beyond that, the ocean's expanse stretches to infinity. A distant speck, maybe a ship, maybe a cloud, glints on the horizon. You reach for your canteen and sip, letting the cold water soothe your blistered mouth. You eat a small handful of seeds, faces turning nutty sweetness against the grit that clings to them. As you sit, you run through your priorities: signal for rescue, prepare for another night of storms, rest muscles for tomorrow's descent, and ration supplies carefully. You press a hand to the rock and whisper, "I own this ground," even if only to steel yourself. The cliff's edge feels like the boundary between danger and control. You close your eyes, listening to wind whisper through the grass and the distant crash of waves below. The vipers have been left behind. Here on this high ledge, you've carved out a domain. You stand and pace the small plateau, stretching hamstrings, rolling shoulders, and letting the stability of stone underfoot ground you. Darkness will come, and with nightfall, new perils, waves of insects, cooling temperatures, and maybe another snake seeking higher ground. But you are ready. You have shelter supplies and the strategic advantage of altitude. You check your watch again, then wrap your jacket around your torso. Temperatures will drop as the sun sinks. You balance a final glance between sky and sea, then settle on your boulder bench, lean back against the makeshift shelter's support, and watch the sunset set the world aflame. The sun's last embers fade, and the cliffside meadow darkens as twilight seeps into every crevice. You press your back against the rough boulder that supports your lean-to, listening as the island inhales deep before exhaling gale-force winds. A distant moan builds to a roar, and the first gusts whip through the plateau, tugging at your tarp and rattling the sparse boulder pillars like ancient bones. You spring to your feet, heart thrumming, and run your hands along the tarp's seams. Your fingers find the reinforcing knots you tied moments ago, and you tighten them, doubling the wraps around each anchor rock. The wind surges again, nearly lifting the tarp like a sail, but your grips hold fast. Each breath carries a hiss of salt spray from the waves crashing far below, and you taste the coming storm on your lips. Branches of the lone scraggly tree scratch against the tarp's fabric, whining under the strain. You tug the tree closer, using your rope belt to lash its trunk to a stout pillar of stone, turning it into a living brace. Its roots claw at the soil beneath, and you pat the knot's wrap, a small triumph against the storm's gathering fury. A flash of lightning rips across the horizon, followed by a thunderclap that reverberates through the rock beneath your boots. You duck under the tarp, pressing your back against cool stone and straining to see through the narrow opening. Sheets of rain fling horizontally across the meadow, drenching the grass and turning the plateau into a slick film of water. The wind surges and you lean into it, feet-wide arms braced. Your shoulders scream, but you refuse to yield. Branches snap against the rocks, a chorus of fractures, sending splinters across the ground. You twist to catch the tarp's edge before it peels free, hands numb from cold and adrenaline. You tug it back down, securing it with a final tie, and duck inside your shelter. Inside, the space is tight but dry. You prop the walking stick horizontally beneath the tarp for extra support, wedging it between two rocks. You pull your jacket tighter around your waist, shivering as the wind finds its way through every gap. You press your pack against the tarp's inner wall, creating a buffer against the wind's raw force. Raindrops hammer the tarp's surface, a relentless percussion that drowns out thought. You close your eyes and count the seconds between each boom of thunder, mapping the storm's approach. The wind wails through the shelter's entrance, salty moisture dripping onto your cheek. You reach for your hatchet and scrape bark from a small branch, creating curls of wood that you'll use to maintain your fire once the storm subsides. Lightning forks illuminating the plateau in stark whites and purples. In that brief flash, you spot a rivulet of water racing past your shelter's base, carving a new channel through the grass. You press a palm to the soil, its mud now slippery and soft. If you want to keep this shelter intact, you'll need to redirect the water. You fish out your tarp's extra corner and fashion a mini trench liner. You cut a flap of fabric and press it into the ground downwind of the shelter, anchoring the edges with stones. As the next gust hits, rainwater sluices toward the makeshift channel rather than pooling under your lean-to. You press your forehead against the cool rock, acknowledging the small victory even as the storm rages. A colossal gust sweeps across the plateau, tilting your tarp until rain splatters your face. You brace one arm against the boulder's lip and clutch your pack with the other, hugging your belongings close. The landscape yawns around you. Rocky ledges vanish in the blur of wind-driven rain, jagged pillars like ghosts emerging and receding in the chaos. Inside your shelter, the ground vibrates with thunder's drumbeat. You strip off your sodden gloves and shake water from them, then pull a small handful of seeds from your pocket. You nibble them slowly, letting the oily crunch warm your stomach. Each chew punctuates the storm's intensity, a reminder that life persists even amid tumult. Wind-driven debris rattles against stone. You wince as a shard of gravel skitters across the tarp and lands near your foot. You shift, careful not to dislodge any supports, and steel yourself. You withdraw a small scrap of mirror and prop it against the shelter wall at an angle. Lightning's next flash will send a beacon toward any passing aircraft or distant ship. Every chance counts. Another lightning fork, another thunderclap. The mirror's reflection skitters across the sky for a heartbeat before the storm blots it out. You tuck the mirror away, fingertips tingling from the cold metal's contact. Your teeth chatter not from fear, but from temperature. You pull your jacket's hood up and tuck the bandana beneath it, insulating your head against the onslaught. Rain pounds the ground beyond in torrents. You listen to rivulets racing past, urgent in their rush. You smile faintly. This island tries to drown you, but you carve order from chaos. You relax your grip on the tarp briefly and let the storm's sound wash over you. Your heartbeat slows, matching the tumult's rhythm. Slowly, the wind's howl diminishes, the thunder's drumroll fades, and the rain eases into a steady patter. You peek out from your lean-to's entrance. The plateau is slick rivulets, carving new patterns in the grass, but the shelter stands. Stones hold the tarp's edges, the stick brace supports the roof, and your shelter remains your fortress. You emerge and stomp water from your boots, then gather the wood shavings you carved. You ignite a spark with flint and steel, coaxing tiny flames to life in the shifting breeze. Keeping your back to the boulder's wall, you feed branches into the fire smoke curling through the shelter's entrance. The smoke's scent cuts through wet air, and embers glow a lifeline against damp twilight. You roast a few seeds over the flames, their nuttiness sharpening as they crackle. You sip water and let its warmth spread from your core outward. The storm retreats into distant rumbles, and you tuck another layer of rope around the shelter's entry for extra security. You lean against the stone wall, eyes fixed on the fireflies dancing in the emerging darkness beyond the tarp. The world has turned to a blur of wind, rain, and rock, but inside you've maintained order. Shelter holds fire burns, and your tools rest nearby. You press your hand to the boulder's surface, feeling its cool solidity beneath the fading light. Snake Island's storm unleashed its wrath, but tonight you endure. You settle beside the fire legs, drawn close, and wrap your arms around your knees. The wind sighs beyond the shelter, a whisper of respect for your resilience. You close your eyes, letting the shelter's warmth and the fire's glow lull you. Sleep will be shallow and wakeful, but you'll rest. When morning comes, you'll survey the storm's aftermath and press on toward rescue. For now, the storm's fury is spent, and under this lean-to you are safe. You rise before dawn's first light. Muscles stiff, but mind alight with purpose. Last night's storm has scoured the cliff plateau. Clean stones gleam with moisture, grass lies flattened, and the breeze carries a crisp salt tang that invigorates you. You stretch arms overhead, cracking joints, and survey the horizon. To the west, the ocean's surface glints faintly. To the east, the jungle wall recedes into a swirling fog. Today is the day for your final rescue signal. You pack away your lean-to materials with methodical efficiency, rolling the tarp and stowing rope and sticks in your pack. You pat each tool's spear shaft's hatchet mirror to ensure they're secure. Your fire's embers are dead, and you scrape the ashes into a small pouch of cloth, tucking it safely away as tinder. Every scrap of material you carry has purpose: survival, signaling sustenance. Descending the cliff face by flashlight beams and carefully chosen holds, you feel wind at your back and gravity's pull in your chest. Each foothold is confident, every handhold tested. You emerge onto the rocky shoreline just as the sky shifts from pitch black to pre-dawn lavender. The beach stretches east and west in an expansive arc, sand dotted with driftwood and seaweed. Your mind maps the perfect canvas here. The clear sand is your message board to the skies. You shoulder your pack and stride toward the highest point of the beach, a gently sloping sand dune that offers maximum visibility. You pause at its crest and squint eastward, no sign of planes or ships yet, just the vast, empty sea. You drop your pack and bend to the sand, pulling out a length of driftwood for etching. Your breaths come steady, fogging the cold air as you sketch a giant SOS nearly 20 feet across, the letters bold and precise. You trace each line twice, deepening the grooves so they'll catch shadow and contrast. You rake aside pebbles and seaweed, laying them along the edges of each letter to heighten visibility. You work systematically, first the S, then the O, then the final S, stepping back to ensure symmetry. Your heart pounds as your message takes form, a beacon written in pale sand. Next, you scour the beach for dark rocks and chunks of driftwood to outline your letters. You find stones smooth and black, remnants of ancient coral. You carry them one by one, positioning each like a soldier standing guard. The SOS grows more prominent, the contrast stark against the pale sand. You pause, brush sand from your palms, and crouch to inspect your work by flashlight. Already in the dawn's dim glow, the message stands out. You scrape a path behind the letters, smoothing the sand to create directional arrows pointing toward your signal. Tiny grooves lead the eye from the water's edge to the giant SOS, then toward the jungle path that you cleared to reach here. Your mind calculates flight paths. Any plane following the coastline would pass within sight of this dune. You imagine the letters from above, bold and unreadable to the naked eye, yet unmistakable in their simplicity. Satisfied, you gather seaweed, plucking long strands and draping them along the SOS's borders. The organic green coils accentuate the black stones and deepen the letter's visibility. You step back again, breath deepening as the first golden rays of sun crest the horizon, illuminating your handiwork. The sand glows, the stones shimmer, and the seaweed darkens, a perfect contrast. You smile at yourself. You've turned a deserted beach into a runway signal. Your next task is daytime signaling. You unpack the battered mirror and place it at the dune's crest, wedged against a mound of sand so it tilts toward the open sea and sky. You affix a length of rope to its handle, anchoring the mirror against the wind. Your pocketknife's blade gleams next to it, ready as a backup reflector. You stow the remaining mirror fragments back in your pack, letting the one large surface serve as your primary signaling device. Then you retrieve the metal crate from your pack. You set it on a flat rock near the dune's top and position it upright, its dented side facing the sky. Using rocks and sand, you stabilize it so it won't topple in the breeze. Inside you pile dry driftwood and kindling anything that will burn bright and smoky. You tuck a handful of damp seaweed in the center. When lit, it will produce thick, dark smoke, far more visible than standard wood fire. You gather small twigs and coconut husks, spreading them around the crate's base. With flint and steel, you ignite a spark and coax a flame. The smoke immediately billows upward, dark and pungent, against the pastel dawn. You stoke carefully, adding seaweed and twigs until a column of thick gray smoke rises skyward, a stark signal against the pink and purple horizon. Crouched beside the crate, you raise the mirror in timed flashes, catching the sun's first beams in a rhythmic pattern. You send long, deliberate bursts, 3 flashes, a pause, 3 more, hoping to mimic an SOS in Morse. Your arm aches from the repeated motion, but your wrist stays steady and the glass sends bright pinpoints dancing across the waves. Above, gulls wheel in the gentle breeze, their cries echoing against the cliffs. You lower the mirror and watch the smoke swirl toward the sea, thickening as it catches more fuel. You press a hand to your chest, feeling the rise and fall of your breath, and whisper, "Notice me." Each flicker of the mirror feels like a heartbeat, each curl of smoke a plea. You stand and scan the horizon, no ship funnels, no aircraft wings glinting in the sun. Yet you hold faith. You know rescue may not come at dawn, it may come at midday or twilight. All you can do is be ready and visibly present. You tighten the ropes around the crate's legs, ensuring it won't tip, then lean against a rock, arms crossed over your chest, and watch. Time stretches as the sun climbs. Smoke drifts east with the breeze, alternating between thick columns and thin wisps. You wave the mirror whenever a cloud passes overhead, mimicking flashes. Your own reflection looks gaunt but determined. You sip water, conserving swallows, and nibble a few roasted seeds for energy. Your ears strain for the distant drone of engines. Your eyes comb the sky for any sign of movement. Mid-morning arrives with a brighter sun, and the smoke plume grows faint in the haze. You refill the crate's fire with fresh driftwood, and the dark column rises once again. You rearrange stones around the SOS to catch sharper shadows as the sun moves. You adjust the mirror's angle to track the sun's arc. You're relentless. You will not grow complacent. Hours pass. The tide inches inward, but your dune remains high and intact. Erosion is slow here, and your message endures. Your resolve, however, is tested by every passing moment without response. Still, you stand firm, shoulders squared against the wind, eyes fixed on the far horizon. As afternoon deepens, you take solace in the small details, the way smoke curls against your signal letters, the gleam of sunlight rippling on the ocean, the rhythmic beat of your own pulse. You remind yourself of all you've overcome: darkness, venom, storm, heat, thirst. This final signal is your culmination, the outward expression of every lesson learned and every ounce of will you possess. You crouch and scan the canal between sea and sand. Gulls dip close to inspect the smoke, then wheel away. A small fishing boat, a speck against the water, appears near the horizon. You raise the mirror and reflet a series of intense flashes. You shout, though your voice carries little. Over here, help your legs ache, but you remain poised, ready to intensify your signal if the boat draws nearer. The boat hesitates, a tiny shape blurred by distance. You hold your breath as it changes course, angling toward the shore. Smoke and mirror combined have done their work. You let out a shaky laugh, relief and hope colliding in your chest. But until the boat's hull is clear against the beach and the hull silhouette unmistakable, you cannot rest. You lower yourself to one knee, hand gripping the crate for balance and weight with every sense straining. You stand at the crest of the sand dune, the rescued boat's outline growing against the horizon, and feel a tremor of anticipation ripple through your weary frame. The sun, now high and unforgiving, bears down on your shoulders, but even its heat pales against the rush of hope flooding your veins. Every survival lesson honed here. Fire, water, shelter tools, respect for danger has led to this moment. You lift the battered mirror again, sending a bright pulse toward the approaching vessel, and wave frantically with both arms, voice roar from days of shouting into wind and waves. Your eyes flick between the boat's meandering path and the smoke's curling plume tracing the lines you carved into the sand. The SOS remains crisp beneath the sun, a testament to your resolve and ingenuity. A chorus of gulls wheels overhead, their cries echoing like applause. You feel the weight of solitude lift as the boat changes course, decisively churning white foam in its wake. You drop to one knee, heart pounding in your ears, and press your palm to the damp sand, dusty grains, clinging to sweaty skin like memories of every step you took. You close your eyes and whisper a quiet thank you to this island of peril and promise. Then you stand dust off your pants and adjust the straps on your pack, knowing rescue is near, but your journey isn't over until you're off this land. The boat slaloms through gentle swells, drawing closer until you can make out figures standing at its bow, binoculars, scanning your signal. Your pulse accelerates and you lift both arms high, letting out the loudest cry your lungs can muster. You pound the driftwood staff you fashioned against the sand, each strike echoing across the beach like thunder. The vessel slows, then anchors in the shallows, its hull bobbing with the tide. You begin your descent down the dune, each step deliberate to avoid tumbling. At the base, you wade into knee-deep water pack, lifted high, eyes fixed on the rescuers who wave back. You slog through the surf, muscles burning, until the boat's ladder is within reach. Your fingers close around the metal rungs, and you haul yourself aboard, chest heaving, gaze locked on the deck above. Hands clasp yours, steady and firm, lifting you until your feet find solid wood. You stand dripping and sandy, but upright and triumphant. The rescuers smile and offer blankets, their gestures kind and urgent. They guide you to a bench, wrapping you in warmth you didn't realize you craved. The boat's engine hums beneath you as you press the fabric to your cheek, inhaling its soothing scent. You allow yourself a moment's reprieve, the roar of the sea, the shifting spray, and the distant silhouette of Snake Island, growing smaller with every passing wave. Relief washes over you in tides, and you close your eyes against the sun, letting exhaustion and gratitude mingle in your chest. You think of the alcove's stone comfort, the cliff's vantage, and every near miss that forged your resilience. As the boat turns its prow toward open water, you feel a subtle shift within the island's wild grip loosens, replaced by the promise of warmth, safety, and stories yet to be told. You open your eyes and gaze back, once imprinting the island's silhouette on your memory. Then you face forward, chest swelling with pride for the parts of yourself discovered and tested here. You tuck your hand into your jacket pocket and draw out the small notebook where you recorded each milestone. You thumb through the pages. Day 1, fire. Day 2, foraging. Day 3, summit. Day 4, storm, and pause at the final margin where you scribbled rescue signal success. You close the book and tuck it away, a talisman of the journey you survived. You settle into the rescue boat's bench blanket, wrapped snugly, and let the gentle rocking lull your mind. Ahead lies fresh water, medical care, and a warm meal. Behind you lies an island both beautiful and brutal, whose trials reshaped your sense of self. You press a hand to your heart, whispering gratitude for every pang of fear and every spark of ingenuity that carried you through. As the boat's wake foams behind you, you raise a hand in farewell to Snake Island, a place that tried to break you, but instead made you whole. You turn your face to the sun, wind in your hair, and take a deep breath of salt and freedom. The next chapter awaits, but for now you let the gentle rhythm of the waves cradle you toward safety. The dawn light was gentle as you drew your final breath of Snake Island's salted air, and in its soft glow, you feel warmth replace the cold edge of fear. Every muscle aches, yet a calm settles deep within your bones, proof that resilience is born from the crucible of challenge. The roar of the ocean has softened to a comforting hum, a lullaby that drifts beneath your thoughts. In the rocking cradle of the rescue boat, the world beyond the island's shore feels vast and inviting, and your heart expands with gratitude. You remember the hush of the ruins, the crackle of your fires, the taste of each precious sip of water, and you find solace in how every moment of panic transformed into a measured step forward. Even the storms, the sky's thunderous hymn, and the rain's chilling bite have become part of your story, echoes of a trial that revealed your deepest strengths. Now, as the sun climbs overhead, you let your guard lower, each breath slowing to match the tide's gentle rhythm. Your mind drifts to future evenings spent by a fireplace where survival stories are shared with laughter and wide eyes. You imagine friends leaning in as you describe the island's shadows and the hiss of vipers, the weight of your pack and the triumph of the final signal. You'll speak of vulnerability and courage, of respect for an environment that demands humility, and you'll tuck these lessons into your soul. In this moment of reprieve, safety is a soft blanket, and each heartbeat is a quiet triumph. The horizon ahead is endless possibility, a canvas for new adventures, etched with the confidence you earned. Let the world be kind to you now, as it awaits your return. Let the gentle sway of the boat and the whisper of the sea be your lullaby, carrying you home, stronger, wiser, and endlessly alive. 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 Endlessly alive.